Assalamu alaikum. Today's episode is a personal story, a quiet turning point, one of those small moments that looks ordinary from the outside but changes everything on the inside. It's about the meal I served myself and what it returned to me. There is something sacred about a kitchen, something private, something holy, something that can't quite be explained in words but is immediately understood by the heart. When I think of the kitchen, I think of warmth without words, gestures of love without speeches, comfort that doesn't need to be announced. But I also grew up watching women who cooked without belonging, women who stirred pots and kneaded dough while being unseen, unacknowledged, and uncelebrated, women who poured love into every plate, love that they themselves had never been given. And for a long time, I did not realize how much of that lived inside me too. Yet they were soft beginnings. Some of my fondest memories are from when I was no more than 2.5 years old, sitting on the kitchen counter, close enough to the stove to smell the masalas blooming in the oil as my grandmother cooked. I remember her rhythm, her grace, the way she never rushed. Then I watched my mother. Different style, different energy, different heart. She cooked with instinct, with ease, with improvisation, nothing measured, yet always perfect. The difference between the way my mother cooked and the way my grandmother cooked was stark. They both knew exactly what they were doing, but their hands moved differently. Their rhythm in the kitchen was different. The sequence, the instinct, the way they reached for the ingredients without thinking. One cooked with precision you could trace, and the other cooked with a kind of ease that felt inherited rather than learned. And I watched both. I absorbed both. I carry both in my hands now, and that feels like being part of a story that began long before I was even born. I grew up in a home where tea was never just tea. It always came with conversation, and it always came with something to eat. Tea time was its own meal, not an afterthought. And tea wasn't just a cup placed in your hand, it was a moment, a pause, a small celebration of being together. There was always something on the table, a biscuit, a slice of cake, a leftover samosa warmed up again, or something freshly made in the kitchen. Tea was hospitality. Tea was warmth. Tea was the bridge between the day's chaos and the evening's quiet. Even when there wasn't much happiness to go around, the table would still gather us. We didn't always come together for a lot of things, but we came together when there was food. Recipes were exchanged, tastes were debated, plates were passed around, and for a little while, the world softened just enough for us to breathe. Looking back, I realize something very clearly now. Food was the balm, the quiet healing, the love that wasn't spoken but was still given, the gentleness that arrived through the doorway of the kitchen. I didn't know then, but I was witnessing inheritance. Not the kind documented in papers, the kind breathed into bone. Years later, my sister and I stepped into kitchens of our own. She cooks like my grandmother and my father, precise, careful, intentional. I cook like my mother, by scent, by mood, by moment. But when something matters, when the meal carries weight, I feel my grandmother's hands in mine, present, steady, sure. I love that about myself. My kitchen is not just a kitchen, it is memory, it is tenderness, it is where I return to myself. And for a long time, food held me through life's hardest seasons. When grief was heavy, when friendships shifted, when I did not know where I belonged. Cooking was my way back into my body, stirring, simmering, chopping, creating. Then came a different season, one where everything felt heavy, where being awake felt like labor, where appetite disappeared, where time blurred. And one day, in that stillness, came a whisper. If I get up, I will make myself a meal, and I will serve myself the way I would serve someone I love. So I got up, slowly, like someone remembering how to exist. I cooked, not to feed hunger, but to touch something alive inside me. I chopped slowly. I cried not because of the onions, but because something frozen inside me began to thaw. I watched heat transform what it touched, raw becoming tender, hard becoming soft, harsh becoming flavorful. Maybe I could become that too. That meal was the doorway back to myself. And as I healed, life began filling again. Friends, sisterhood, shared kitchens, shared laughter, shared quiet understanding. And I realized cooking for someone is a privilege. It is never casual. When I cook for someone, I am saying, you are someone I make space for. You are someone my heart softens for. There also came a time, and this is important to say, when I poured my heart and soul into meals for people who were not ready to receive that kind of love. Because feeding someone is not just feeding them, it is a quiet declaration. I see you, I am thinking of you, you matter enough for me to give my time, my energy, my presence. And for a while, I gave that care too easily. I cooked with tenderness for people who did not hold that tenderness with care. I offered warmth to people who did not know how to stay, and it exhausted me. And that exhaustion became a teacher too. It taught me that cooking is not only a privilege for me to offer, it is also a privilege for someone to receive. Because when I cook for someone, it is one of the most intimate, personal things I can do. It is saying without words, I am willing to spend myself to bring you comfort. And not everyone is worthy of that level of closeness. Not every relationship has earned that space at your table. So I learned slowly, gently, that love must be given with discernment, that care is precious, that nurturing is sacred, and that my labor of love is not something I offer casually anymore. Now, when I cook for someone, it is intentional. It means you are safe with me. I trust you and I choose you. And that is something holy. So, yes, food taught me boundaries, how to love without emptying myself, how to pour warmth only where warmth can be held. For years, food was my constant, my language, my mirror, until once again, my season changed. It has now been a year, almost, since I cooked the way I once did. And quietly, I mourned that, thinking I had lost something essential. Until one day, with tears threatening to break through, I told a friend, it feels like I don't have it in me anymore. And I will never forget what she said. She looked at me with the most gentle eyes and said, just because you're not doing it right now doesn't mean you've lost it. Your joy isn't gone, it's resting. When the season is right, it will return. And something inside me softened. Allah reminds us in chapter 94, verse 6, surely with hardship comes ease. Ease does not always return loudly. Sometimes it returns like a simmer, a whisper, a slow unfolding. Allah is gentle and He loves gentleness. So I am returning slowly. One cup of tea, one bowl of soup, one plate prepared quietly just for me. Sometimes healing is the meal you serve yourself. Sometimes prayer is the tea you pour with tenderness. Sometimes coming back to life begins in the smallest, almost invisible ways. If you feel far from yourself, listen carefully. You are not lost. Your softness is not gone. Your joy is not gone. It is simply resting. And when your heart is ready, your season will return. Come home gently. Ya Allah, the turner of hearts, the restorer of light, the one who returns us to ourselves gently. If there is something we once loved that feels distant now, return it to us in the right time, with the right peace. Fill our spaces with warmth, our hands with gentleness, our hearts with softness, and let us recognize your mercy even in the quiet seasons. Remind us that nothing you have placed within us is ever lost. It is only resting, preparing to blossom again. Amen. And my loves, before you go, don't forget to be kind to yourself. Unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders, soften your breath. And no, you haven't lost your joy. You are simply resting. And when the heart is ready, it will return to you beautifully, like it never left. Thank you for being here. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.